Hi everyone, it's Spencer here. I want to do something a little bit different today. So I was thinking of doing something similar to a podcast, just like voicing my opinion on like e-learning at the moment, what different approaches you can take, different programs and platforms you can start to use with students, especially with sort of the new year in September. So depending on what institution you're from, you may be going back in September. You may be starting to actually do it directly online as well from September. It depends. I know some unis are doing everything digital for like the whole of next year. Some colleges are going back in September. So it's quite a good time to sort of think about your different options for the near future, what route you're going to take and what not. And just have a look at all the different programs that are in your radar basically, and make a decision. So if you've used lots of programs within the past couple of months with your students for online learning, so you might have used things like Zoom, you might have used Teams as well, and from there you can branch off into like distributing your PowerPoints and showing your PowerPoints like you normally would in your regular lessons and whatnot. And I said now was a good time if you built up like your knowledge of these applications. For example, you've never used Teams before, now all of a sudden you've used it to the bone and whatnot. You know what I mean? But yeah, now's a good time if you think you might want to use that in the future. It would be good to continue this with your students if they get thrown to the next year of the course, for example. But if you haven't used anything like this in the past, or you might be watching this in the distant future, and you might want to have a little look at different programs, applications that are available to you, feel free to just plug in your headphones and get a drink. And I'm just going to have a little chat for 20 minutes, half an hour. But some of the applications that I've used in the past I find beneficial. And yeah, so I'm just going to get into it and talk about a few things I've used in the past. So with key learning, you've got different routes and different options you want to take. So as I said, you've got sort of like your video broadcasting programs and applications such as Zoom. You've got your Teams as well, and you've got things like that as well. So you've got FaceTime, you've got Skype, but they're not quite as professional as Zoom and Teams can be. Now with Zoom, I'm sure you've all used in the past for either personal use or professional, because lots of quizzes going around at the start of lockdown and whatnot. But as you know, you have to set up a meeting, and then you can send that out via like an invite. So you can be that email, text, you can stick it in a group or something like that, stick it on your VLE, stick on Moodle, Canvas, something like that. But with Teams, you can set up like an actual team. So you can add your students in there, and you can all send messages and chats. You can embed different things within there. So if you've like set up a team to use like sort of during this the time that we're in, now's a good time to think, do I want to carry that forward to next year? I've got all my documents in there. All the students are quite familiar with using it as well. Or you've got new students coming in for next year. Would it be good to continue using it? Do I want to teach them how to use it and whatnot as well? Because then you have like the background knowledge, so then you don't have to learn it as long with your students at the same time. You can go straight into it for next year, and you can basically teach them up yourself, which will be really quite handy. I plan to do some videos on Teams in the near future, so feel free to tune into those and request those in the comments if you so wish. But yeah, there should be some different applications pulling through into Teams very soon, specifically Teams Classroom. So things like Nearpod, you got Wakelet as well, which I've looked at in other videos, and things like Peardeck as well, which I'm going to look into. Now that allows me to cut through nicely into those sort of three applications. Now with like distributing and showing your PowerPoints to students, obviously when you're in-house you can just stick it up on the board, stick it up on the projector, literally just flick through the questions, flick through your slides and whatnot. But in lockdown, as you all know, it's been a little bit difficult. It's been a bit different. You can't do everything the same way, so you've had to find workarounds. Now, I previously worked at college during lockdown, and it's quite good to see sort of different facilitators, sort of background knowledge and input on what they think they're going to do to basically share their lessons with their students. Now, some people just decided to share their screen when they're doing a meeting on Zoom or on Teams. That's fine, you can do it like that. Share your screen, flip for the PowerPoint. But there's also been some great alternatives to doing that. So your students can actually join, actually flick through the slides themselves, and actually see it on their own screen. So you can have like Teams or Zoom in the background for audio. And then you can go on to, for example, Nearpod's very good. Peardeck's great as well. I'll go on to that in a second. And you've also got things like Prowise, which I haven't looked at. Now, all three of these applications, there's obviously more as well, but these are three that I've used particularly recently and have stood out to me a little bit. The three in particular with your Nearpod and Peardeck, but you can with Prowise as well, import pre-existing PowerPoint presentations, or I believe Google Slides with both of those as well. I have to double check. But you can import pre-existing PowerPoint. So if you, for example, if you've got a PowerPoint that you're going to actually teach in-house, some might have been something you created last year or a few months ago, you can import it and then make some changes if you so wish. You can add in interactive elements with your Nearpod. So I believe I showed in another video, so feel free to go back and have a little watch of that. I'll try and link it at the end if I can. But you can add in your quizzes and polls. So as you're flicking through the slides, like you probably normally would when you're doing a lesson, you might have like for example, if you're teaching maths, you might have a formula, you might have an equation on the board there. You run through it with the students. Obviously, you wouldn't just move straight on. You wouldn't just say like 4 + 4. That's it, right? Next question. You might want to sort of branch it open for opinions and whatnot. Now, with Nearpod, you can actually sort of add those questions in beforehand, add in polls. So if people are a bit stuck, now's a good time to voice their opinion, and you can like chat about it and not move on until people are got a bit more idea of the background of that slide in particular. Now, with Peardeck, as I said, I'm going to do a little video on this quite shortly, so look forward to that coming. Peardeck is going to be in Teams very soon, if it's not already. Now, with Peardeck, you basically log in with your Office 365 and you can see all of your PowerPoint presentations there. You can also create them in Peardeck itself in PowerPoint Online. Now, students can join with a code similar to Nearpod, but you have the ability to actually add elements in during the presentation, so while you're actually teaching it live. Now, this can be the ability to get students to draw, so they're going to draw their opinion. You can add like a little bit of text from them. Do you want to get like their opinion or something like that? It also allows you to get a bit of feedback at the end of the lesson. Did they understand it? And also at the start, so it could be like a good bit of like a stretch and grow challenge, something like that. Now, with both Nearpod and Peardeck, you can like save it and you can export all the results out to Excel and whatnot, and they'll look quite nice in the spreadsheets as well. But so two different alternatives. Now, if you've used both of those in the past, obviously you probably won't need to use them when you go back in September or January or whatever it may be. You'll probably just go back to your PowerPoint presentations, because then you can walk around the room as you normally would. You can ask your questions. Students can voice their opinion and whatnot without having to unmute their mics and write down opinions and stuff. They can literally just voice their opinion. But now, one application you might want to use in the new year, and if you've actually used it during lockdown, you might find it even more beneficial to use actually when you're actually in-house again, and that is Prowise, particularly Prowise Presenter. Now, if you haven't used in the past, Prowise, also ProConnect as well, it's a really sort of fancy presentation software, I suppose is the best way to put it. You can also import your PowerPoint presentations, you can import your smart notebooks, things like that, and PDFs as well. Now, with Prowise, I'm going to do another video on this, so don't worry. I'm just going to, as I said, just to chat so you can get some ideas about what you can do for the new year. But yeah, with Prowise, you've got access to all like pens and shapes as you normally would in your basically like a Word document, for example. But the great bit about it is you've got the ability to like draw on there. So if you want a student to come up and work out what something would be, like an equation, or put in missing punctuation of something in this text, they can go up and highlight it. It works a little bit different to that of PowerPoint if you've used the pens on PowerPoint. For example, if you've got like a smart board in your institution, you might just pick up a pen, draw on the PowerPoint, and then obviously you can save it on there, export it out as a PDF and stick it on your VLE or stick it on Teams so students can come back and have a look. With Prowise, as I said, students can grab a pen, write on it. You also minimise out of it, so basically just have your screen available, and you can also just draw on your screen, draw shapes on the screen on your desktop, and then save that out as an image. Now you've also got the ability to do ProConnect in Prowise, and this is like similar to Nearpod, similar to Peardeck. This is the more interactive element. This is the bit you probably used in the past during lockdown if you've used Prowise at all. Now I haven't mentioned this, which is not very good, but Prowise you can also use with Office 365. So if you've got an Office 365 account, you can sign in and get started, or you can make an account and have a play around with Prowise Presenter 9 before Prowise 10 comes out. Now, can't remember what I was saying now. Now, yeah, so ProConnect. Now, this is the interactive bit, so you can students can draw on with a code, like everything now, similar to Kahoot. And then you can start things like a mind map. You can start a word cloud. You can do things like that as well, things like games and bits and pieces on there as well. Which is really quite fun. You can save that in the PowerPoint as well. So if you're running a poll in particular as well, so polls are something I forgot just now. Say for example, if you're running through a PowerPoint you've already previously created, you want to stick in a poll in there, you can do that live. You literally click on ProConnect, click on poll, and you've got a few different options to choose from. So you can go like a yes or no, or pick a colour, something like that. So if students are joined on their phone, it could be from home, it could be distance learning, or it could also be in-house as well. It's quite a nice thing, especially if you might be in like a larger lecture theatre or something like that rather than in a classroom. Get students to join on there, click on either yes or no, and it'll pull through literally live. It's instantaneous onto your Prowise basically, and you can flick through. You can either have it anonymous, so you literally just see like a bar chart, or click on the figures so you can see exactly who's put what. And then if you so wish, you can save it in presentation, so you might want to come back to it later on. So only like 75% of you knew what this was, but at the end of it 95%, for example. So it's quite a good way to like see progress during the lesson. Obviously you can save that and come back to it later on in a week or so as well, which is a really quite interesting thing. So yeah, so though there are like three of the more prominent to me PowerPoint tools that I've used in the past, especially during lockdown. So Prowise, Nearpod and Peardeck as well. Three great applications. Nearpod and Peardeck in particular for distance learning. Prowise is brilliant, in particular more when you're back in house again. Now there's something really good which I'm going to look into, and I haven't actually done it yet. I've just read about it and I've heard about it. I thought that looks really interesting. Now in PowerPoint Online, not PowerPoint Inline, I'm not sure where that came from, you now have the ability to do like a live session in there as well, which sounds really cool. So you won't have to go into a separate application. If you're in-house, you can literally do like a little live thing, and from my understanding you can do live polls with students and things like that directly in PowerPoint Online. So if you use PowerPoint a lot, PowerPoint Online in particular, and you've got everything saved in your OneDrive when you just launch it up at the beginning of your session, this might be a really good tool for you, something to look into. As I said, I'm going to look into this myself and get a little video out there so you can all have a look and see what it looks like from a teacher, facilitator, and also a student point of view as well. It's quite good to have both sides of the coin there. But yeah, a little something to think about if you use PowerPoint quite a lot. You've also got the new PowerPoint Online live feature, which is really quite a cool thing. Now, if you've seen some of my videos in the past, you might have known that I'm a big lover of H5P, so HTML5 package. Now, this can be accessed via their website, so h5p.org. And if you use Moodle quite a lot as well, it's embedded into Moodle now. I believe it works with Canvas and Blackboard, but I'll have to double check. I'm a Moodle lover personally. But if not, they basically just work with HTML. So if you know how to use HTML and you're basically in your VLE and your LMS, you can embed them directly in there, and they look really quite nice and fancy. Now, within H5P, you've got, at the moment, but it's been constantly updated, 43 different content types to choose from. So that ranges from, I could drag the words, you can do a hotspot area as well. You can do things like pairs, you can do speak the words, you want students to actually speak their answer rather than write it down. And you've also got things like accordions as well. So think like a Wikipedia article. Generally, they've got a little drop-down boxes for particular elements of the article. You can do that for like an activity as well. So obviously that's just 4 or 5 of some of the ones that have come to my head as I'm just thinking here. But there's loads, and they're all really simple to get started and create. And as I said, if you use Moodle, if you use Canvas and VLEs, and also blogs as well, WordPress, it works really quite well with WordPress. You can embed them directly in there. If it works with HTML, have a little look. It will work basically, and you can embed it directly in there. If you've got like a grade book or a way of tracking grades on your VLE, so in particular with, I'm thinking Moodle and Canvas here, you can go in there, and for some of the content types, like the drag the words and the mark the words, it will say the student scores in there. So you can go back in a later day and see, for example, what Joe Bloggs put for that one. He got 3 out of 10. You can go in and see exactly what he put. Now, this means you have to go into a separate application. It's all directly on your VLE. Obviously, then you can export that out if you so wish as well onto your markbook and whatnot, which is really quite a nice thing. So yeah, I've used H5P quite a lot in the past. It's really quite simple to get started and create. If you're like an e-learning champion, for example, or whatever you may call it in your institution, it's really quite a nice tool to, as I said, really quite easy to get started. And for those that might be a little bit unfamiliar with technology in particular, not necessarily just e-learning, just not very good at just IT, and they find it quite tricky to work their way around and navigate the desktop, like Windows or Mac OS X as well. It's quite a nice tool to actually build up their confidence. If you have a little look at my H5P video, you might have seen it. It takes me literally 15-20 seconds, if that, to get started and actually create one of these activities, actually go in and then answer it myself. So if you haven't got lots of time, it's one of the applications that's really good. Literally half an hour before your session, you can literally just make some activities. I know I've spoken to some facilitators in the past. There's some really great tools out there, but it's just a case of I don't have the time to actually sit down and start creating them, which is the issue. With H5P in particular, there's no issue with that. You can literally do it in a minute, as I say, which is great. It's one of the good things about it. Now, something to consider is basically the collaboration with e-learning. Now, I know some people literally just like using e-learning for the collaboration side of things, be this through a forum on your VLE, be this through a blog, be this through something like Padlet or Wakelet, something like that. Now, collaboration spaces are a great way of getting learners and facilitators and lecturers all in one handy dandy space, can voice their opinions and whatnot. Now, Teams is a really great way, basically moving on from what I said earlier on in the podcast. You can do it all in one space. You can have like a literal collaboration area. I know some people like to do like a little student chat area, or even a stick in the general chat if you so wish as well, and just voice your opinions in there. But yeah, with your collaboration spaces, particularly I'm thinking of your forums on Moodle and Canvas, as well as your Padlets, and in particular your Wakelets as well. Wakelet I've looked at in another video if you're interested in that. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of Padlet if you haven't used it in the past. With Padlet, you can literally just create a board, You can add your different text on there and images and whatnot and web URLs. And then students and other teachers and colleagues of yours can go in there and voice their own opinion. You can go in there, drag it around, change colours and whatnot. Makes it a little bit more interactive and customizable. Obviously then you can embed that into your VLE as well if you so wish. So students don't have to navigate to the page. You can literally click on to your VLE, go on to the HTML element, your Padlet you've embedded in there, and voice their opinion. Only issue is, if you've used Padlet in the past and you've got a free account, I believe in the near future they're going to be rolling out a charge for it. So if you've used it quite a lot in the past, in particular with your learners, now might be a good time to start thinking of possible alternatives. One of them that I've stumbled across very recently, within the last month or so, is Wakelet. Now Wakelet is very similar. You can upload your Word documents in anything from OneDrive basically, as well as videos, audio files, websites, videos. I think I said videos. But yeah, a few things like that. And then you can add people to contribute. So you might want colleagues to contribute on it. You can have, like, for example, I don't know, an engineer in Wakelet, where all engineering staff can voice their opinion on there, share websites they might find beneficial, share example PDFs, documents if students want to have a little play around and whatnot. Or you can just share that out with students, so you can have like a engineering only staff. I'm just using engineering as an example here. Engineering only staff Wakelet, and then share it out with students so they just have the ability to look at it basically. They have read only access. But what we can do as well, we can also share it out to anyone with a particular email address, or share out via email and share it via Teams or whatnot. So if students go on there, they can actually add their own opinions and add their own things as well. So it might be quite good for like a collaboration thing, as I said. So if you want students to put in their PDFs, any websites they might have found particular for their studies at the end of the year, have they used any websites in particular to help them over the course of the year, any assignments they found particularly difficult or challenging, it's quite good to stick all the information up on there, then you can use it and whatnot. Now Wakelet in particular is really quite customizable. You can choose different themes, so if you want it to look more like a mood board or simply like a list, you can change it around if you so wish. But once again, you can embed that directly in there into your VLE or anything that supports HTML, so you don't have to navigate to a different website, which is really quite cool as well. Now, if you're an institution that uses actual e-learning content, now if you like to make e-learning content, so I'm talking your articulate storylines and your things like that as well. Articulate storyline and Adobe Captivate, that's one I can think of. Now, if you like to use those, you've used those in the past. I'm not sure if you've been using those during lockdown, because those are a really great tool, I suppose, because you might have created those to actually be used as sort of like a follow-on from the lesson in particular. So if you've started a lesson on fractions, you might have created like a storyline for fractions, like a little follow-up session or prior knowledge basically. So you might want to stick it on the VLE so they can have a little look beforehand or after, like a little summary. It might have been good if you had all of those backed up. For example, if you created lots in one day, for example, I'm not sure if you shared them all with your students and they actually completed them and gave you feedback on it, because things like that, your actual e-learning content, they're a really quite good tool for all situations, as you can probably presume. So as I said, if something like this happens again, God forbid, hopefully not, because we're going to be throwing out a bonk again. But yeah, if something like this does happen again, it's quite good to know that you have it all there. If you've made them in the past, you can just share them out with your students or just embed them into your VLE as you normally would. Yeah, if you haven't used either of those in the past, or so Articulate Storyline or Adobe Captivate, there's also lots of other great things in the past, and you're not too sure what they are. Basically, I'm sure you've done things in the past if you've done like online CPD. Do you know where you flick through and there's videos in there, you have to fill in the blanks and whatnot, and you might get a certificate at the end. Now, most of these are run in Articulate Storyline and Adobe Captivate. If you've used them in the past, yeah, so like your CPD things there, and they're quite simple to get up, starting and create. You can add transitions and motions in there, add a bit of life in there. If you've seen in the past, you might have things like a moving writing hand as well. So you might have seen for like your videos online, particularly for like things like equality. If you've seen those videos for like equality and diversity and things like that, all those types of videos you might have seen on YouTube, you might be doing with your students in like forums and things like that. All those videos are made in those e-learning content sort of tools like your Storyline and your Captivate. It's really quite a nice thing if your actual organisation uses those and you're quite familiar with technology. I definitely recommend going and pursuing it, having a little look. If you haven't got those, they're quite an expensive thing to go and have a look at. So it's quite good to have a little look into and get some opinions and see if you can actually use it in your studies. But if your organisation, as I said, does use those, definitely pursue it and have a little look. It's really quite a good thing, a little bit different for your students to get started with and start learning. I just want to mention as well another thing, your quizzes and things like that. So your things like Kahoot, your quizzes, and other things similar. So, you know, where you join with the code, you can have that sort of competitive element. Now, I've seen and I've heard from some facilitators and lecturers that have actually been using things like your Kahoots and your quizzes as well, because you have the ability to not only, as you've probably done in an in-house session, do it live, but you can also do it at their own time. So if you create something in Kahoot, for example, you can send out that code and the students can join at their own time. So obviously it's a bit different if you're not doing it actually in-house, if you're doing it remote and whatnot. Obviously people have different things going on. You can still get students to actually go on there and complete the quiz. Obviously it's not going to be exactly the same because not everyone's going to be around you and have that sort of buzz as you normally would, but you can still see a leaderboard as well. If you're the first person doing it, you won't have that leaderboard, but if you're the second or third, you'll be able to see all the people above you, and you still have that sort of slight competitive buzz to try and get higher than that person before you. Now, if you've started creating quizzes, obviously during lockdown, as you all know, you can still use those quizzes in the new year. So, as I said, with Kahoot quizzes, if you've done them like asynchronous for students to complete at their own time, or if you've done them live, so for example, if you've been in a Zoom conference with them or a Teams meeting, you might ask them to go on to Kahoot, go on to quizzes, put in the code, and you might still have that sort of the buzz of them talking actually in Teams or in Zoom. You can see the leaderboard popping up. Obviously, it's not going to be the same. But as I said, if you've created them, you can still use them next year for your new set of learners, or if it's more of just like a revision tool, or if you've done more of like a thing to lighten the mood, or it's like a general knowledge sort of quiz, I guess, something like that. Obviously you can still use those throughout the year or throughout the years of your teaching, for example, as well. But yeah, really, that's I think all I really wanted to talk about. I just wanted to voice my opinion on the matter at the moment and some of the different, as I said, some of the different routes you can take if you so wish, some of the different programs you might not be familiar with, some particularly like your Prowise and Peardeck, something to think about, in particular with the start of the new academic year and some of the applications you might want to have a little look at. And as I said, if your organisation uses things like Storyline and Captivate, definitely try and pursue it. It's a really good, really quite good tools for your students to start learning with. Not actually, they can't actually learn to use it per se, but if you start creating tools in it, it's a different way to learn. So more of your traditional teaching methods, I guess, but with your interactive e-learning elements embedded directly in there, so a bit more of a different feel. But yeah, really looking forward to seeing what all your different methods and what you've done during lockdown as well, what teaching methods and practices you've taken. If you find this sort of podcasty thing beneficial as well, now that would be really quite good to me to hear your opinions and whatnot. If you'd be interested in listening to something like this as well, and obviously if I can try and get it onto a different platform, if you're interested as well, so not just on YouTube, if I can try and get onto iTunes or Spotify, something like that as well, I'll try my best. But yeah, please feel free to voice your opinion in the comments below, or also on my discussion page if you're using YouTube on your PC rather than a mobile device. But yeah, really looking forward to what you all have to say regarding this podcast. Looking forward to hearing from you all. Thank you for listening.